So this year has been odd, shall we say, to say the least. But when they say, that old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, or in many cases, for many leaders throughout the world, when the going gets tough, the tough leaders just sit back and do nothing. And we have seen that pretty much throughout the world of pretty much lots of, quote, tough guy leaders, from Boris Johnson, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Orban in Hungary, the Five-Star League, their governors out there who've been downplaying coronavirus to one. I think one even said that there wasn't any coronavirus in his region when there actually absolutely was. Needless to say, it's been a sort of interesting year exposing all these guys, just to show you that at the end of the day, rhetoric doesn't do anything. What you actually need are policies. But of course, many of these guys can't actually produce policies. And in the case of the UK, we are now in a absolutely awful, terrible situation. And we need some serious actual leadership and a leader that is going to put forward policies. So, of course, with Boris in charge and potentially, I say this with no word of lie, we are probably going to be looking at a Michael Gove premiership. We just don't know when. It just depends when Boris decides to go. So let's get into this then, shall we? This comes from The Guardian, and with his sudden U-turn over Christmas, Boris Johnson caps a year of debacles. And oh, what a year it has been. At Christmas time last year, the only cloud on Boris Johnson's horizon was how he was going to pay for a winter break with Carrie on Martinique. The answer, rather typically, was that someone else would pick up the tab. The opposition leader raised a complaint, but few Tories begrudged that their leader his getaway in the Caribbean. He had just delivered a stonking election victory, their best since Margaret Thatcher was at her zenith. He was, in other words, as one senior Tory lord put it, the lord of all he surveys. Celebratory Christmas receptions at Number 10 were pungent with the scent of hubris. However, being a student of classics, the Prime Minister should have known that the gods will punish arrogance, and nemesis came in the shape of an invisible microbe. The pandemic has tested the mettle for leaders around the planet, but among the mature democracies, few were singularly ill-equipped to handle a crisis of this nature and magnitude as Britain's Prime Minister. He has looked good only when benchmarked against Donald Trump. The coronavirus crisis could not have been more cunningly engineered to expose Mr. Johnson's flaws. He was made Prime Minister not because anyone thought that he was cool and a decisive head with the leadership skills and moral seriousness required to handle the gravest public health emergency in a century. He was put there because he was a successful representative of the entertainer branch of populist leadership that prospered in the pre-virus era. We elected him to be a good times Prime Minister, comments one senior Tory. His curse is to the Prime Minister in bad times. Few of his strengths as a politician have been much of unity in this emergency. All of his weaknesses have been searingly exposed. A man who spent his career ducking responsibility was suddenly confronted with a challenge that could not be run from, though that didn't stop him vanishing at the outset when he went missing from critical meetings. In the coronavirus, he met an opponent impervious to glib slogans and empty promises. Here was disease posting hideous and inescapable dilemmas that confronted the have your cake and eat it philosophy which he had lived all his life. Not that he didn't try to do that anyway. At the time of the first national lockdown, There we go. When one of many live viruses' livelihoods argument was boiling within the government, I attempted to discover which side the Prime Minister was talking. One witness to those initial debates told me, Boris is being Boris. He wants to end all restrictions and get the economy fired up again without a single life lost. He can't have that, of course. The wrong criticism of his performance is to say that he has made mistakes confronted with a novel disease for which the country was unprepared. Any Prime Minister would have made the errors. The correct criticism is that he has failed to learn from his mistakes and egregiously repeated them. Then there is a pattern from preparation and ordering the first lockdown. Sorry, just annoying adverts keep on moving the text up and down. There we go. To the bout of indecision over the second. And last night's sudden cancellation of Christmas relaxations and imposition of a Yuletide lockdown on London and the South East. The pattern is one of resting, taking the necessary steps at the time when they would have been most effective, and then being compelled to implement them late, even with more damaging effects. Even the Tories concede that their government's record is at the bottom end of the international league table. Britain has suffered a double whammy of having one of the highest death tolls per million of population while enduring the most severe hit to the economy among the G7 club of prosperous states. One former Tory cabinet minister remarks, "There's bound to be a public inquiry. We will be held to account for that fact that our deaths are higher and our recession is deeper." This senior Conservative adds the coda. Boris will tell the inquiry that he was chairman of the board and it was his people who have failed him. Oh, that's going to be fun. Oh my word. That when these public inquiries do happen, and they will be right, there will be a public inquiry. There will be no escaping from this. Boris trying to blame other people for his failings will be one of the most spectacular things to watch out for probably next year. My word. My word indeed. Oh. And to be honest, that sounds about right for Boris. From supply failures of essential equipment to the summer exams debacle, to the care home scandal, another pattern of the crisis has been attempts to swerve culpability from all the things that have gone wrong by blaming anyone else but ministers. Power without responsibility has been their credo. 6 senior civil servants, among them the cabinet secretary, have been sacked or pushed out this year. Not a single minister has resigned. Yet few dispute that Mr. Johnson appointed one of the weakest cabinets in modern history. Given his lack of dedication to detail and the hard grind of delivering a competent government, he needed a capable cabinet. And freebie feeling of having any substantial figures around and the top table who might have challenged him, he instead surrounded himself with a cabinet characterised by Tory MPs as lightweight, talentless, loyalist duds and nodding dogs. Yeah, that's one way you can sum up our cabinet. That's definitely one thing. The only explanation for the extraordinary survival of the serial blundering Gavin Williamson as Education Secretary is that he exists so that the rest of them can say, well, at least no one can call me the most useless member of the cabinet. That's infinitely true. Another persistent pattern during the plague year has been to overpromise and underdeliver. We're going to have a fantastic, and this is a world-beating, and a moonshot the other. We would have settled for a test and trace and isolate program that actually worked. This was accompanied by a compulsion to claim that the virus was about to be beaten. Way back in mid-March, he breezily proclaimed that we can send coronavirus packing before suggesting we can turn the tide in the next 12 weeks. Optimism can be a positive trait in a politician, but wishful thinking is a fateful characteristic in an epidemic. So is the deceptive messaging to the public. In the summer, Mr. Johnson foolishly tied himself to a guarantee that Britain would enjoy a significant return to normality by Christmas, a promise that his scientific advisors copiously denied to endorse, and at the time, which was dramatically proved completely false last night. That misjudgment, like all the other ones, flows from his personality. Just below the surface of his performance face lurks the insecure character who trusts no one yet yearns to be loved by everyone. He hates being the bearer of bad news and tough choices. One of the many women in his life, Patella Watt, once excused his activity on the grounds that he will do anything to avoid an argument which leads to a degree of duplicity. Yet, the successful handling of the crisis demanded a competency to confront people with what they wouldn't want to hear, and sufficient reserves to trust to persuade them to act in ways that they'd rather not. His most effective personal performance was the video he released after his own self-described mugging by the virus, when he paid tribute to the NHS as the beating heart of the nation. Even then, he failed to start a proper conversation either with his party or the country about the trade-offs involved getting through this kind of emergency. And though he became Prime Minister because his party rated him as their best communicator, he has precisely struggled to find the right tone when addressing the nation. Anyone familiar with his biography knows he's a libertarian Tory who used to earn a living as a columnist by fuming against a nanny state. In some ways, this has served him well. It has been obvious that he has imposed curves on behaviour with extreme reluctance. This has not stopped right-wing Tories from rallying against restrictions, but it probably meant that he got less pushback from the public than a Labour Prime Minister might have done. Yet, there has been a profound problem with a Prime Minister who never gives the impression that he fully believes in his guidance to the nation. Even when he has life-preserving advice to dispense, he hasn't been able to shake the habit of trying to disguise grave tidings in comedic gift wrap. Remember squashing the sombrero, or Operation Last Gasp. Now, it is the invocation to, quote, have yourself a merry little Christmas. With his party disenchanted and voters disapproving, this Yuletide won't be accompanied by a hubristic party at number 10. The Prime Minister's hopes of revival of his reputation in 2021 now rest on a successful vaccination programme. In the new year, says one senior Tory, we will need bouncy old Boris back to cheer us up, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The light will be exceedingly bright to wipe away all the memories of the long, dark and stumbling failings that have been this nation's journey through the tunnel. And yeah, holy moly, I have said it before, there is no way Boris somehow survives until the next election, let alone be actually on the ticket leading the Conservatives. I cannot now imagine that happening, and at some point next year, Boris has to go. Now, because of the coronavirus, it could be very likely that Conservatives know that Boris wants to go, but they force Boris to stay because they don't want him to leave until the virus is dealt with. So, I think at the first opportunity that Boris has to go, as soon as that gate opens, he's going to bolt like a horse into the pastures as quickly as he possibly can, because he does not want to stay any longer than he possibly can, because we've said it before, I don't think Boris is even meant to be any sort of leader. No way. Boris is a cheerleader at best, and I think a lot of Tories are now realising that, and they're hoping that at least maybe Boris might change his cabinet. Fat chance of that happening because, like I say, Boris doesn't want anyone strong or anyone at least capable to actually challenge him. And hence why we've had 6, secretaries quit this year, and they're the ones who have taken the blame, and not a single minister has quit. If after all this, when eventually the virus is over, if Matt Hancock doesn't resign, it will be absolutely ludicrous. But there you go. That's just the possibilities that we're living with at this time. And, it's literally lunatics running the asylum in the UK at the moment. So, as always, thanks for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button on the way out. And of course, down below, there is a link to my Patreon page as well as a one-off donation link. And thank you very much to all the people that do support me that way. And of course, have a very happy and wonderful and safe Christmas. And see you all next time.